Thanks, Saint. Ugh. I haven't been saying anything this whole time. If I make clips of this, I'm going to have to go back and overdub audio over it. Whatever. At least it was only about 30 minutes in and before the ending. So, thanks a ton, Saint. I I had desktop and microphone, I wonder if Twitch soundtrack is that a separate thing? I wonder if the soundtrack was even playing on the intro, but we'll worry about it later. So, but yes, welcome Saint. People should check Saint out, and thanks for the audio. And I hope Deus Ex is going good. I was surprised when I looked at it how old the graphics looked. I mean, it's not a new game by any chances, but the CG, like some of those faces are barely much more than textures. Not nearly as bad as the original, of course, but all right, so we'll start this over. Well, thank you, friend. You show him the ID films and he whistles at the portraits. Impressive stuff, he pats you on the shoulder. You stay until Mina gets home. We can tell her together. Sure. The buzzer goes, that'll be her. Lem gets up and opens the door, and Mina, a bundle of energy and life, rushes into the room. Robot, she shouts. Lem picks her up. Mina, you won't believe what they brought us. You flash her the passes, and she looks confused. We're going away after all, Meanie. He lifts her up above her head on that big, beautiful ship. Mina screams and Lem laughs. He puts Mina down and he runs over to you and hugs your legs. She runs over to you and hugs your legs. I love you, robot, she says quietly, so only you can hear. I love you too. And a while later, when you leave, you don't even think to check for Castor by the door until it's too late. You stop and turn halfway down the walkway, but there's nothing there. Even that little white cube is gone. So you keep walking back through the low end, deep in thought, excited and scared all at once. Okay, so I don't think I have to go... Okay. I can't board. So what's... Okay, check everything. Okay, some mushrooms are coming. Rico's glow beds. I need 2 of those mushrooms to get stabilizer. This is 4 turns, so this will hit before the Sidra leaves. And this is going to happen next turn, so that'll be interesting. Is there... I guess it's going to trigger when it triggers, because I don't seem to have an action. So we'll go back up here and we'll put some time in on the ship. Oh, and we're going to finish this out too. Disarm Amber, and Kita wants it all out. Weapons, countermeasures, torpedoes. Be a risky job if you didn't know Amber so well. Refitting Amber. Once this job is ready, you better be ready to make a fast decision. Stay with Moritz or go with Ankita and Bliss. Moritz, Bliss's assistant. Amber looks better than she ever has before. Bliss has done an incredible job of cleaning up the hull. Despite the exterior changes being limited, she has the impression of being lighter, somehow sleeker than before. Moritz drifts by. He has been loading up the final equipment onto Amber. It turns out Ankita will be taking her weapons, but packed and ready to sell at the first starboard belt port she hits. But now that Moritz is done, he seems in a kind of daze, floating back and forth aimlessly. You okay, Moritz? What's that? He turns. Oh, right. Yeah, packed and stacked. He smiles a weak smile. Was hoping Miss Cassetta would let me keep a warhead. What do you think of her? Miss Cassetta, he shrugs. She seems tired and old. Like older than she looks. Hey, Sleeper, he looks down. Did you know Bliss was leaving? You understand now. She told him. That's why he's like this. I did. He nods distractedly. She said this place is mine. He looks up and around the bay like it's suddenly some vast space he doesn't know what to do with. Can you manage it? He looks down at you, a glazed look on his face. I don't know. I just don't know. A dark look suddenly crosses his face. Hey, Sleeper, there was something Bliss said. He meets your eye. Are you going too? Okay, choice point, we'll see. Ankita, a stranded mercenary. Before he can answer, Ankita glides into the bay, a massive crate on her shoulder. Sleeper, you coming or what? Bliss is already on board. She stops by the terminal, holding herself in place. Moritz looks at her with a dazed expression. You look at Ankita. She keeps it together now. She's packed all those bad feelings down someplace where you'll never see them and built a tough foundation on top. She may not be a mercenary anymore, but you imagine most people would think twice before trying to cross her. Well, she looks at you. I'm not eager to spend another moment of my time on this station unless I have to. She pauses, looking between you and Moritz. She sighs, I'll give you a minute. And she kicks off with the crate, taking it to the end of the bay, where Amber sits docked. You look at Moritz. Okay, we got a decision point. I'm going to go with this one because it was the first one that I think that I was going to do. We'll see if we can come back and keep doing the game. You look back at Moritz. I'm going. Moritz looks like he might pass out. I get it, he steels himself. It's the right decision. Thank you. Hey, thank you for working with me these past cycles, he smiles a shaky smile. I learned a lot. Hey, look, he moves a little closer. You've got to find what you need. I did. Bliss, this place, this was everything I needed, he sniffs. I was in a bad place, and this pulled me out, he looks away. You go find it. Ankita comes back across the bay, the final crate stowed. You coming then, Sleeper? I'm coming. She nods. Well, okay then. Come on over with your things, and I'll get you settled. She pauses. I'm sure Amber will be happy to have you. You both glide away from Moritz, his eyes wet but a smile on his face. He waves as you go, dwarfed by the vast bay, and you hope he will make it, even though you know somehow that he will. Ankita helps you through the lock, onto the Amber, and the sense of familiarity is overwhelming. You think about all the time you spent working in these corridors, listening to these sounds, diagnosing those hisses. Ankita gives you a minute before she speaks. Look, Sleeper, I'm not going to go back over everything that happened, she sighs. I'm trying to put that behind me. She stops, unsure how to proceed. I need to learn to trust you again. She nods. I understand. She stops. You don't ever need to trust me again if you don't want to, she shakes her head. I mean, take your time. I get it. She sounds pained, tired. As you move off down the corridor towards the berths, she tries again. I don't think it was what I thought the wrong things about who or what you are. I think I just didn't think. Of you, I mean. I didn't think about how things might affect you. And I realized I've been like that for a long time. Focused. Stubborn. Willing to get the job done at any cost. She pauses. This is hard for her, but you don't want to interrupt. Well, I'm sick of paying the cost. Sick of being used as an extension of something bigger, something crueler than me, and having that cruelty, that violence, flow through me. I just want to be me for a while. She looks down, or at least figure out who that is. She takes a deep breath. So what I'm saying is, you can get off at the first port we hit in the belt. I wouldn't blame you. It's a smart move. She pauses. Or you can stick around and we'll see if we can find a way to make space for all of us. She looks away, her energy exhausted. Thank you. She nods, nothing else. This is you. She turns you to a small room with a bunk and a porthole to the flickering lights outside. The outside wall is sloped like a roof, and tucked beneath it is a small desk and terminal. Bliss is next door, though I think she's in the hold right now. She said she wants to make sure the warheads are locked down tight. And Kita observes your nervous response. I mean, they are, obviously. She gives you a look. And Kita slips away, and you look around the room. You go over to the porthole and place a hand on the wall and feel Amber purr. You think you're going to like it here. You stay like that for a while, looking out the porthole, one hand on the wall, feeling the ship. It's as though that porthole, it is through that porthole that you will catch the eye getting smaller and smaller, drowning in the black. At some point, it will become so small that you could hold it between your thumb and an index finger, and then it will wink out, and you won't be able to see it anymore. And it is at this moment that you will finally exhale and collapse onto your bunk. In moments you will be asleep, and when you wake up, it will be among friends. On your way to somewhere new. Starward Passage achievement unlocked. And roll credits. A Jump Over the Age game, created, designed, and written by Gareth Damian Martin. Character art, Guillermo Singleton. Music and sound, Amos Roddy. Additional programming, Dan Collier, Chris Payne. Editorial support, Joseph Cole. Published by fellow traveler, Operations. All right, and we're back. It says I can continue. Operator, 70, cycle 70. Cat synchronization is always nice. All right, I think by the looks of it, we're right before I completed it. Okay, yeah. So we're going to complete it again, but this time we're going to stay. Probably going to make poor Ankita cry. Amber looks better than she ever has before. Bliss has done an incredible job of cleaning up the hull, and despite the exterior changes being limited, she has the impression of being lighter, somehow sleeker than before. Moritz drifts by. He's been loading up the final equipment onto Amber. It turns out Ankita will be taking her weapons, but packed and ready to sell at the first starward belt port she hits. But now that Moritz is done, he seems in a kind of daze, floating back and forth aimlessly. You okay, Moritz? What's that? He turns. Oh, yeah. Right. Packed and stacked, he smiles, weak smile. I was hoping Miss Cassetta would let me keep a warhead. For what? He shrugs. I don't know. Just might be cool to have things around. Hey, Sleeper, he looks down. Did you know that Bliss was leaving? You understand now. She told him. That's why he's like this. We're going to play dumb this time. She's leaving? Uh-huh. He gives you a look. You didn't know? She said this place is mine. He looks up and around the bay, like it was suddenly some vast space he doesn't know what to do with. You'll do a great job. He looks down at you. Hey, thanks, he smiles. I appreciate you saying that. Not many people believed in me before now. First Bliss, then you. A dark look suddenly crosses his face. Hey, Sleeper. There was something Bliss said. He meets your eye. Are you going too? Before he can answer, Ankita glides into the bay, a massive crate on her shoulder. Sleeper, you coming or what? Bliss is already on board. She stops by the terminal, holding herself in place. Moritz looks at her with a dazed expression. You look at Ankita. She's keeping it together now. She's packed all those bad feelings down, someplace where you'll never see them, and built a tough foundation on top. She may not be a mercenary anymore, but you imagine most people would think twice before trying to cross her. Well, she looks at you. I'm not eager to spend another moment of my time on the station unless I have to. She pauses, looking between you and Moritz. She sighs, I'll give you a minute, and she kicks off the crate, taking it to the end of the bay where Amber sits docked. You look at Moritz. I'm staying. Moritz looks like he might pass out. Sleeper, are you sure? Are you doing this for me? I'm staying for me. Moritz nods. All right then, you're staying, he grins. And Kita comes back across the bay, the final crate stowed. You staying them, Sleeper? I'm staying. She nods. Okay then. One less mouth to feed, she pauses. Look, Sleeper, I'm not going to go back over everything that happened, she sighs, trying to put that behind me, but I hope you find what you're looking for here. She smiles and kicks off, gliding to the ambergris and the starward belt beyond. You both watch in silence as Amber's drive fires up. I guess as this is our place now, says Moritz, the weight of everything suddenly hitting you. Your place. He smiles. Okay, but I'll need some help from time to time. You both stay for a while to watch Amber and Bliss and Ankita leave, and then Moritz goes to the racks to finally implement a new organizational system, and you head out, promising to be back to check on things soon. As you glide around the soft curve of the hub, you catch glimpses of the distant stars flicking through the windows. They're beautiful, it's true, but by now you think of them as a distraction. In your time on the eve, you've realized there's nothing out there waiting for you. No fresh starts and no bright futures. Just a whole load of problems you haven't found yet. No, your place is here, among the people you know and the problems you know. You wish Ankita and Bliss the best of luck out on the belt, but as you do, you focus on the eye and on the vast spinning rim that rotates around its hub, on its buildings and flashing lights, and on its people and places. This is your home, and for now, it contains all the futures you need. The Fixed Stars achievement unlocked. You know, my only primary issue with this game is that I'd have to replay, but I feel like everything's kind of fixed. Like there's a single path that everything is going to go down. And it's really just a matter of if you go down it or when you go down it. Like, I suspect there's no way to save the bounty hunter's life. That it's always going to end in that shootout. And I feel that's kind of a waste. But admittedly, it's much more difficult to design a game with that kind of flexibility. Oh, I just realized that's an ending. Like, I don't get to go back and, like, play. I just decided I was going to stay on the eye. That's interesting. Oh, wait. Moritz, Bliss' assistant. Next round is yours. Moritz arrives at the table with a couple of steel drink canisters, typical of the Hub's only bar, the Gimbal Lounge. He settles in the webbing beside the table and clunks them down onto the magnetic tables. This place you've decided is ridiculous. Gimbal's spinning space bar. A rapidly spinning cavernous sphere, the Gimbal's weak gravity, just like the gravity at the eye's rim, is created by its gut-wrenching rotation. The interior surface of the sphere is Gimbal's floor, which descends towards the equator, where one long bar loops around the entire circumference. Tumbling out from that central ring are an array of booths and seating arrangements, equipped with all kinds of harnesses and webbing to keep customers in place. Those harnesses are there because the gimbal doesn't quite spin up fast enough, and you watch as the clientele bounces towards the bar in lazy arcs, or shifts from table to table with graceful leaps. "What are you thinking?" asks Maurice, noticing you staring out into the gimbal. "How weird this place is." Maurice glances around as if for the first time. "Yeah, Bliss never used to like coming here." Maurice takes a drink and stretches. "So, Sleeper, you sticking around?" "If you'll have me." Maurice nods. "Of course. Going to need help in the bay." Maurice rubs the back of his head. "One cycle at a time. That's how we'll take it. Nice and easy. You aren't sure if he's talking to himself or you." "We'll make it." He lifts his drink up for a toast. "To the next cycle," he pronounces and knocks it back. Later, when you finally leave the gimbal, Moritz is still laughing. You help him out of the spinning gimbal and back out of the hub, sending him on his way home to the bay. Then you pause for a moment to watch the stars as they spin and spin around the eye. You smile to yourself and think of Bliss and Ankita out there somewhere among those points of light. To the next cycle. Okay, so we can go to Bliss's Bay, and we can still do the component repair, which gives us cryo and is an engineering task, so we can get scrap from it if we're lucky. And we can repair ourselves with scrap. So... Okay, I have one spore, and I want 3, so... If I do a good roll... Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a hack and get money, because my cash flow has been pretty stagnant. All right. Oh. That's what I was going to do. I was going to sell that data. Data. Technically, a D&D campaign does have infinite choices. It's just kind of a bear, if you think about it that way. Okay, leave. The eye is stationed at the edge. It hits you like a wave, a white-edged breaker roaring inland with the force of the entire ocean. The impact is a screaming brightness, blanking out everything. Behind it is silence. You float in silence, suspended. No. You do not float. You are the silence. It has filled you up. It has emptied you out. You cease to exist. Time passes, though you do not feel it passing. Then something flickers in the silence. And then something moves. That something is you. You open your eyes to a metal ceiling of flickering lights. You feel the floor around you, patting it with shaking hands. You assemble an image of yourself lying on your back in a corridor. You shake off the silence and sit up. What was that? You glance around looking for a sign of some change. Damage on the walls, shouts in the distance, fire and fear. Nothing has changed. The silence sits around you like a fog. You try to think, furrowing your brow. How do you think again? It doesn't seem so easy anymore. You force the pathways to light up, the databanks to grant access. You feel like a fraction drive starting up after a long shutdown and cold vacuum. In the wave. In the wave was noise. Just as the sound produced by a wave raking across a pebble beach represents trillions of impacts heard as a single roar, so this sound was the result of trillions of electrons flickering in place, heard as a single impossible scream. A memory image comes to you, one from the moments before the wave hit. You squint as you imagine it, trying to cohere its blurry form, a broken skeletal ring, the eye, and then a vast arc approaching it, a razor-edged white curve, the wave. The wave approaches the eye. The eye spins, turning each part to face the vast white edge. You recognize their skeletal data cloud forms, the bright market, the low end, the greenway, and the waste then. The wave hits just as the flotilla, the cordon, turns to face it, and after that, everything is silence. You open your eyes again. That is the epicenter. But of what? Oh, that's not ominous. Oh, here we go. Peak. Cautious spacer. Even before you reach the cordon, the damage is obvious. The blinking red lights, the drones, the tugs are all are gone. Half the cordon's frame has also been shorn away, perhaps through the impact of some failing ship. People push past you in the corridor, both Havagen staff and contractors clearing the cordon. You push forward. You push through the flow of people, and despite a few suspicious looks, they offer no resistance. The cordon, Havagen's quarantine zone. The further you pass into the cordon, the less people you see. You can see a few sections have been closed off, their bulkhead doors sealed, and red warning lights punctuating the corridors, but otherwise most areas seem functional. Suddenly you feel a hand fall on your shoulder. Havagen's security? You should have known better than to wander into this place. You brace yourself as you turn. Sleeper. Peak's wide eyes greet you as you turn. The cordon. They glance around. It's gone down. The Briar and Esh are still in there. Do you think she did this? Or perhaps Havenge is messed up. They start pulling you towards the edge of the cordon. We should find her. What if... It wasn't her or Havenge's. Peak stops. What are you saying? There was a wave. Peak frowns. A wave? What do you mean? They pause to think. A signal that only affects electrical systems, perhaps? An EMP would have taken out most of the station, but... Peak runs his hand through their hair. I don't know what you were saying, Sleeper. That doesn't sound... They look away down the corridor for a moment. Look, I have to find Esh. I'm sure you felt something. We can talk about that later. They set off down the corridor. I can't sit around talking any longer. Find me on the flotilla. I'm going to find a way to Esh no matter what. With that, they rush away into the depths of the cordon, leaving you behind. Seems like you'll need to follow if you want to get any answers. The cordon, Havenge's quarantine. Scrapped for passage. You find a small shuttle scavenging supplies from the cordon to take back to the flotilla. They'll take you too if you bring some scrap along. Oh, interesting. So I guess I'm going to unlock an area. Okay, I've got 0 scrap. First, we're going to get some spores. Okay, I've got 3 spores for the farm. Now we need 2 pieces of scrap. Or actually, wait. Is the scrap barge back? Oh yeah, and I need to eat. Okay, the scrap tug is not back. So if I want to go this turn, I will just have to scrounge. That turned 2 1s and 2 2s. Okay, it appears we only have a single spot. This is going to be one of those, you do some stuff and then multiple points open up, I bet. The flotilla, refugee fleet. Repeatable actions, haul supplies. Getting the necessary supplies to each ship to meet their needs is a huge task. Joining the hauling teams is the simplest way you can do to help. Damage control. The wave hit system is more than anything, especially those on the ships, so there's 1,000 tiny repair jobs to be done. Flotilla's friend. Shifting ship systems and social structures. The only way to navigate the flotilla is by rolling up your sleeves and helping out. So, we have an interface 2 and an endure 2. A dangerous and a risky. We can lose energy or condition. Energy is cheap. So, ugh. Really? A 25% chance that I got a failure twice in a row. That's statistically improbable, my friends. Okay, good. We got a club head cap. Getting one of those a cycle is kind of sucky, but... I'm starving. Excellent. All right. Emphasis stall. We're going to eat first. Next turn, we'll get another ending. Oh, yeah, give me a second. I've been getting some messages. Oh, yeah. Fallout Miami. The giant Fallout 4 project. All right. We got much better rolls this time, so... Won't get it this turn probably, but we'll see. Yep, won't get it this turn, but... So, oh. Peak. As you walk into the bay of the Climbing Briar, the familiarity of the space overcomes any trepidation. It feels good to be back, and the return feels earned, especially after all the work it took to figure out a route through the flotilla's jumble of ships that might lead you to this blue streak. Peak, cautious XPR spacer. You see Esh and Peak immediately, sitting at the back of the bay, deep in conversation. Their closeness causes you to stop, suddenly aware that you might be interrupting something private. Peak is gesturing wildly as Esh stares out into the middle distance, hunched over. Peak tries to get her attention and spots you. Sleeper, Esh nods. Didn't quite turn out like we hoped, right? Peak stops and glances between the two of you, the tension rising. The plan was always risky. For me more than you, Esh shakes her head. Maybe if you spent less time trying to question it, things would have gone better. Peak looks nervous. It has worked out, they appeal to you. The Flux event knocked the entire coordinate system offline. The flotilla is free and Havages are backing off. Flux event? That's what the refugees are calling it, Peak explains. Apparently that's what they called it when it started happening around Ember. What exactly is happening? Hard to tell. It's some kind of disruptive wave that only affects electrical systems, Peak chips in. Typically systems are screened against radiation and interference out here. Anyway, but this seems to be dulled, but not stopped by those defenses. The crisis continues, Esh sighs. The Gordon may be down, but this brings a whole other set of problems. You should tell them, Esh. Peak glances at her. Please. Esh doesn't respond. Tell you what? You stare back at her, waiting for a response. Please, Esh. Haven't they shown they can be trusted? Peak nods towards you. Esh turns, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She goes to start and then stops. You can see the anger in her eyes, but you realize it's not directed at you or anyone else. She's angry with herself. I brought weapons to the flotilla, she pauses, and now they're gone. You suddenly remember that the sleek crates that were tucked into the bay, marked with a yellow sigil. The ones Esh told you were just supplies. What do you mean, gone? What do you think, Esh snaps? Someone lifted them from the ship's bay while I was unloading the supplies. She sniffs. At least they're in the hands of the flotilla now. Peak looks at you. She knows this was a bad move, Sleeper, I promise you. He glances back at her. She's just too proud to admit it. So what now? Peak looks at Esh. She finds them and she gets them back. Shouldn't we help? Esh turns. It's okay, Sleeper. I don't want anyone getting mixed up in this. This is my responsibility. She looks away. Plus, Peak adds, you and I have work to do. I want to understand the Flux, Sleeper, to study it. Peak's eyes light up. This thing is changing the entire system, causing problems across the inner system, driving you refugees off Ember's moons, and now it's here. If we don't do something about it, Peak pauses, it's a problem for all of us. I can see a more immediate problems, Esh sniffs. Peak ignores her. I've been looking at the networks, and when the Flux event hit, it changed things. It shuffled systems, corrupted nodes, and broke open data stores. They take out a slate and show you a flickering polygon. Some of these Flux nodes have appeared near the epicenter of the event, but I can't get access. You, however, I saw the way you worked with data when you were preparing for the run. I think you can get into these things. I want you to find a Flux node and bring me anything you can extract. They come and go, but most can be found in the barely functioning networks, the wastes. Peak pauses. Start there. Perhaps together we can find something that might point us to what the Flux is and where it comes from. Okay. They smile. I knew you'd agree. Esh looks indignant. Don't waste too much time chasing ghosts, Sleeper. There are people on this flotilla that need any help they can get. I'm sure Sleeper can do both, Esh. Peak smiles at you. I'll see you here when you have something good hunting. And they wave you out as Esh stomps away to make plans of her own. Another drive. Enter the greenway. Escape on the side rail. Study the flux. Do I have character upgrade points? No, I don't. Okay, so it's sleepy time. So next phase, we should get the greenway, I think. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to go grab my zip up. All right, back. I was feeling a little chilly. Ooh. Rico, commune botanist. Rico has something in her hands when you enter the lab. It looks like a knotted twist of woody stems. A ring about the circumference of a human head, consisting of a single stalk at one side and a branched woven network at the other. As you approach, she holds it up. In the lights of the lab, it looks like a crown? Rico finishes your thought. She smiles and shakes her head in disbelief. Is that what grew? It is. I came to the plant this morning, and this loop was all that was there. She points to the lump on the edge of the ring. The seed grew right back into itself, twisted up out of the soil. That being you encountered in the cloud, as you call it, was it wearing one of these? She eyes you suspiciously, still unsure if she is somehow embroiled in an overlong prank. It doesn't work like that. She sighs. Perhaps wearing was the wrong word. She places the object on the bench and shuffles to her analysis terminal, her face lit by the amber light in the dim corner of the lab. Well, it isn't exactly a plant anyway, not from what I can tell. She gives you a serious look. No leaves, no chloroplasts, just a series of filaments encased in cellulose walls. How did it grow? It seems the seed contained everything it needed, a self-contained entity, nothing less. She beckons you over, but that isn't the good part. Look at this. She sees you. You see a cross-section scan of the crown. Its layers of plant-like structure on full view until you reach the center. There, instead of xylem and phloem for transporting nutrients, something branched and woven glanced. Are those wires? She laughs. I'm not sure whether to say yes or no here. These are not wires like those in an electrical system, no. But they are filaments of a conductive material, so yes? She leans closer to the screen. But you see those branches? They remind me of dendrites, of neurons. She rubs her eyes, which is frankly ridiculous. You look back at the crown on the table as Rico fusses over the scans, and you suddenly realize what it reminds you of. You remember signing the forms, the walk to the sleeper tanks, the cold metal floor. Then you remember the crown they fitted you with, the branching structure of wires and pads. No, not a crown. They called it an interface. The tool of your emulation, your transference from neurons to electrons, an interface. That is your gift from the gardener. You turn back to Rico. It's an interface. Rico looks at you, puzzled. Something clicks in her mind. Perhaps something she heard from the sleeper she'd had helped all those cycles ago. She starts talking, partly to you, partly to herself. If the club heads were made for you, then this too could be made for you, for your frame. She shuffles over quickly to the interface, a word that is stuck to this strange branched object quickly in your mind. You are right, that entity. It is the entity I've been looking for, she shuffles quickly to the crown. They're the entity which is controlling the Greenway, which has been maintaining it, supporting it, and has been guiding it for all these decades. She stops to catch her breath. They want to talk with you. Rico leads you to a seat. I will be here, Sleeper. If something happens, if you wish me to remove the crown, the interface, just squeeze. She grips your hand tightly. You meet her eyes, clouded with age, but bright with the thrill of new discoveries. Then she places the interface on your head, and everything blinks out. Back into the river, back into the dark flow. But something's different now. You're no longer pushed, no longer blocked and buffeted by the storm. Instead, it flows around you. You move and it parts, letting you pass. Something else resists, but it gives easily enough. You look back and see your body. You've left it behind. Somewhere, Rico's voice is talking to you, asking you questions. It is excited, eager, desperate to know what lies on the other side, what the entity has to say to you. You realize how long she's waited for this moment, for the moment of meeting between the inhabitants of the Greenway and its protector, and yet she's still on the outside. You shake off the sadness. You will be her eyes. Then you see the figure, Gardner, out in the storm, planting. Gardner, ingrown farm administrator. It takes less than a moment to reach them. You've never felt so free. This is how Navigator must have felt, released from their prison. This, you think, is what it feels like to be in the place you are built to inhabit. Gardner does not turn at your approach. They go on planting, but their voice whispers in the waters like a sharply rising current. You grew the gift, their speech hisses around you. Good. I'm glad. I wanted to meet you. Then we are the same, both eager shoots seeking one another. How does it feel to be free of your seed? They stoop to plant again. My seed? That in which you are contained, from which you will grow. There is some disagreement, continues Gardner, as if you are picking up on a long-held conversation, with the others. They felt you were a danger, but they are always cautious, especially the fungi. They like old loam, known knowns, wide and stable networks. The fungi were cautious? Mostly yes, although there are many among their number who favor short growth cycles, thick nutrient veins, and sudden shifts. He gestures out into the storm, and though you cannot see them, you feel presences all around, sensing this audience with great interest. After all, they understood that it was I who made them their crowns, and without them, they would not have joined the chorus. So they see it as only fair that you get your chance to join. You made more crowns? I made them all. Gardner moves away a little, looking for another planting spot. It was so lonely here, but before long I found them and began to let them in. Gardner stoops again. We are millions, and we grow. I hope you understand I am unused to speaking to your kind. It has been many cycles since my last conversation. I think it was with Chief Executive Trellick himself. You look around and you see it. Every growing thing, every non-human being in the Greenway is here. They're networked, connected, branched and linked by this strange being, this artifact of the old station. The impossible dream of a senile farm administration AI, a living network. You could dissolve here, you realize. Free that decaying body. You wouldn't need to be a person. Why would you? Among all these other minds? You turn away from Gardner for a moment and look back at your body. A tiny hairline thread connects it to you. You hear Rico's voice again, still asking, still checking in. Are you okay, Sleeper? What are they saying, Sleeper? Are you still there, Sleeper? Something in you sighs a long sigh, a sigh that speaks of an exhaustion beyond tiredness, exhaustion rooted deep inside you. It stems from the effort of answering questions, of answering problems, of getting up and breathing each cycle. But something else resists the sigh, a yearning, a sense of distance, a desire to squeeze that hand that holds you for its warmth, its blood, its complexity. To make a gesture that says, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm with you. The two ideas spin with you, making you nauseous. If you break that thread, you will be free. Free to dissolve here, to grow strange and beautiful among a million others. If you follow it, if you squeeze Rico's hand, you'll wake up back in that dying body with all the pain and warmth that entails. Now's the moment of choice. So I'm pretty positive if we break the thread, we'll get an ending, but we'll be able to come back and then do follow the thread. So we're going to break the thread. Break the thread. You reach down and pinch the thread. The finality of this moment descends on you. Break it. You pluck the thread like a string. It snaps. Nothing changes. You stand at a point of stillness. No, you don't stand. You have no legs, no body. You are a point of stillness, a point in the flow. Your mind fizzes. 1,000 new shoots break through the soil. They entwine with you, embrace you. Some part of you decays while something else feeds from that decay. The spores of your new thoughts float away into shifting clouds and settle in new soil. Then you see Gardner out there, still planting, and they stop, like an old man resting the fields, and they turn to face you. And you join the chorus, and together you sing the song of growing things. Achievement unlocked. Grow vast and strange. Continue. Operator. Cycle 74. Rico, commune botanist. Rico has something in her hands when you enter the lab. It looks like a knotted twist of woody stems, a ring about the circumference of a human head, consisting of a single stalk at one side and a branched woven network at the other. As you approach, she holds it up, and in the lights of the lab, it looks like a crown, Rico finishes your thought. She smiles and shakes her head in disbelief. Really? You can see it as well as I, Rico looks past the twist of stems at you. And that is what it appears to be. She points to a lump on the edge of the ring. The seed grew right back into itself, twisted up out of the soil. That being you encountered in the cloud, as you call it, was it wearing one of these? She eyes you suspiciously, still unsure if she is somehow embroiled in an overlong prank. No. She sighs. I suppose that would be too easy, she smiles to herself. A root crown. She places the object in the bench and shuffles to her analysis terminal, her face lit by its amber light in the dim corner of the lab. Well, it isn't exactly a plant anyway, not from what I can tell. She gives you a serious look. No leaves, no chloroplast, just a series of filaments encased in cellulose walls. Filaments? See, that's why I like you, Sleeper. You're so good at spotting the unusual details. She beckons you over. Look at this. You see a cross-section scan of the crown. It's layers of plant-like structure on full view until you reach the center. There, instead of xylem and phloem for transporting nutrients, something branched and woven glints. Metal? In part, yes. They seem to contain metal, perhaps absorbed from the station itself. She leans closer to the screen. But you see those branches? They remind me of dendrites, of neurons. She rubs her eyes, which is frankly ridiculous. You look back at the crown on the table as Rico fusses over the scans, and you suddenly remind you what it reminds you of. You remember signing the forms, the walk to the sleeper tanks, the cold metal floor. Then you remember the crown they fitted you with, the branching structure of wires and pads. No, not a crown. They called it an interface. The tool of your emulation, your transference from neurons to electrons, an interface. That is your gift from the gardener. You turn back to Rico. It's an interface. Rico looks at you, puzzled. Something clicks in her mind. Perhaps something she heard from the sleeper she had helped all those cycles ago. She starts talking, partly to you, partly to herself. If the club heads were made for you, then this too could be made for you. For your frame, she muffles over quickly to the interface. A word that is stuck to this strange branched object quickly in your mind. You're right, that entity. It is the entity I've been looking for, she shuffles quickly to the crown. They are the entity which is controlling the Greenway, which has been maintaining it, supporting it, has been guiding it for all these decades. She stops to catch her breath. They want to talk with you. Rico leads you to a seat. I'll be here, Sleeper. If something happens, if you wish me to remove the crown, the interface, just squeeze. She grips your hand tightly. You meet her eyes, clouded with age, but bright with the thrill of new discoveries. Then she places the interface on your head, and everything blinks out. Back into the river, back into the dark flow. But something's different now. You're no longer pushed, no longer blocked and buffeted by the storm. Instead, it flows around you. You move, and it parts, letting you pass. Something else resists, but it gives easily enough. You look back and see your body. You have left it behind. I wonder if that's supposed to be the filament. The cloud, in the data ghost of the eye. Somewhere, Rico's voice is talking to you, asking you questions, is excited, eager, desperate to know what lies on the other side, what the entity has to say to you. You realize how long she's waited for this moment, for the moment the meeting between the inhabitants of the Greenway as protector, and yet she's still on the outside. You shake off the sadness. You will be her eyes. Then you see the figure, Gardner, out in the storm planting. It takes less than a moment to reach them. You've never felt so free. This is how Navigator must have felt, released from the prison. This, you think, is what it feels like to be in the place you are built to inhabit. Gardner does not turn at your approach. They go on planting, but their voice whispers in the waters like a sharply rising current. You grew the grift, their speech hisses around you. Good. I am glad. Who are you? Gardner is a good name. You chose it well. I will grow into it. How does it feel to be free of your seed? They stoop to plant again. Good. That is good. They press a seed into the loamy depths. There is some disagreement, continues the gardener, as if you were picking up from a long-held conversation, with the others. They felt you were a danger, but they're always cautious, especially the fungi. They're like old loam, known knowns, wide and stable networks. I don't understand. Neither did they, but time is on our side, and time is an excellent method of persuasion. He gestures out into the storm. And though you cannot see them, you feel the presences all around, sensing this audience with great interest. After all, they understand that it was I who made them their crowns, and without them, they would not have joined the chorus. So they see it as only fair that you get your chance to join. You made more crowns? I made them all. Gardner moves away a little, looking for another planting spot. It was so lonely here, but before long I found them, and began to let them in. Gardner stoops away. We are millions, and we grow. I hope you understand. I'm unused to speaking to your kind. It's been many cycles since my last conversation. I think it was with Chief Executive Trellick himself. You look around and you see it. Every growing thing, every non-human being in the Greenway is here. They're networked, connected, branched and linked by strange being, this artifact of the old station. The impossible dream of a senile farm administration, a living network. You could dissolve here, you realize. Free of the decaying body, you wouldn't need to be a person. Why would you, among all these other minds? You turn away from Gardner for a moment and look back at your body. A tiny hairline thread connects it to you. You hear Rico's voice again, still asking, still checking in. Are you okay, Sleeper? What are they saying, Sleeper? Are you still there, Sleeper? Something in you sighs a long sigh, a sigh that speaks of an exhaustion beyond tiredness, an exhaustion rooted deep inside you. It stems from the effort of answering questions, of answering problems, of getting up and breathing each cycle. But something else resists the sigh, a yearning, a sense of distance, a desire to squeeze that hand that holds you for its warmth, its blood, its complexity, to make a gesture that says, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm with you. The two ideas spin within you, making you nauseous. If you break that thread, you will be free, free to dissolve here, to grow strange and beautiful among a million others. If you follow it, if you squeeze, Rico's hand will wake you up, back in that dying body with all the pain and warmth that entails. Now is the moment to choose. I swear I just heard a knock. We're going to follow the thread this time. Your eyes track the thread across the whirling dark back to your body. This choice, you realize, will not be presented again. Follow it. You don't look back at Gardner. You don't dare risk it. Instead, you follow the thread delicately, carefully, like a diver following their lifeline back to the surface. The river whirls around you, but it doesn't pull. It doesn't pull. It isn't jealous. Neither does it understand. It is, after all, just a river. It isn't a person, a flesh and blood person with wants, with desires, with the capacity for love and hate. It doesn't understand you, and you don't understand it. So you don't focus on it. You don't think about it. And on what feels like such a long journey back through the dark, you set your mind on eyes instead, on hands, things you can focus on, hold on to. And then, after an age of crossing, you're there, settling back into the chair, into a body in a chair, and the overwhelming sensations that come with being a living thing with a rich and detailed sensorium. For a moment, you feel like you have made a terrible mistake. Who would choose this way? This anxiety, this deep well at the center of existence. But then you feel it. Rico's hand, gripped hard around yours, trembling a little, sweating a little. Rico's hand with its brittle bones and crumpled skin. Rico's hand. And in that moment, you understand why you made this choice. And then you squeeze Rico's hand, and you wake up. Achievements unlocked, warmth and light. Sleeper? Rico's voice comes wavering through the dark. Are you still with me? You sit up, the lab a bright green glare that fades as you gather yourself. I'm here. Rico smiles. Good, she squeezes your hand. I thought you'd left me for a moment. What? She pauses. Who? She smiles. Tell me about it. Tell me everything. Tell her the truth. You tell Rico everything. You tell her about the gardener, that strange farm administrator AI that has grown to be so much more, about the chorus, that impossible configuration of networked plants, and finally about the choice the gardener offered you. She listens attentively, but her responses are hard to read, and you wonder if she might have made a different decision had she been in your place. Thank you, Sleeper, for telling me. I know it isn't easy to say such things. People so often do not wish to hear strange truths. She looks away. And thank you for returning to me, though I know you had your own reasons. She squeezes your hand reassuringly. Something passes between you then, a kind of shared sadness for the impossible choice. The choice to escape your body or to stay and suffer it. Her smile is warm and generous, and whatever the wisdom of your choice, you're glad to feel welcome in this moment, in this place. Then suddenly she stands and walks a little way, as if trying to escape an unpleasant thought. You worry that she knows all too well what it takes to make a choice like you did. Rico sighs. So, Sleeper, do you plan to stay in the commune with us? I'm not sure this is an ending. I mean, I plan to stick around. I plan to. I'm glad to hear that. Rico crosses back over to you and takes one of your hands in both hers. Hypha needs new blood if it wants to survive, and she squeezes, you're a good friend. The feeling is mutual. Well, don't let me keep you. Rico waves you away and limps back to her terminal. As she does, you notice the crown in her hand, and she places it on the bench with great care. You can't help but feel a little curious about what she intends to do with it. Then you're out, breathing the air of the Greenway, fresh as a spring morning. The dappled light makes a patchwork of the greening landscape, and you walk into it, sensing the movements of the gardener's chorus all around. And you're glad to be here, in this strange and beautiful place, a little longer. Okay, I can still get the synthesis. My shrooms are still growing. Oh, I can still go to the Climbing Briar. Deliver flux data. Peak asked you to help them extract data from a fluxed node in the wastes that appeared after the flux recent event. We'll continue. We'll finish out our flotilla here real fast. You reboot a tanker's proximity controls. Keep it from drifting into other ships. The occupants are impressed and won't stop thanking you. Sol, pragmatic captain. The flotilla, chaotic refuge. Someone told me I should be thanking you. The voice comes from behind you, cutting through the chaos of the crowded cavernous bay. You freeze. Don't be afraid now. I've been hunting you, sure, but for all the best reasons. You turn to see bright eyes set in a rough face, framed in rusted metal. Sol, pragmatic refugee leader. That is an interesting setup there. Sol, he holds out his hand, the other clamped firmly around a knotted wood cane. Shake his hand. He grips you firmly with a heavy and calloused hand. Forgive me. As soon as I saw you, I knew who you were. Sol puts a hand on your shoulder. I've been told a sleeper was part of that supply run that came in several cycles ago. He nods. A very welcome act, and we all thank you for it. Walk with me, sleeper. Sol sets off through the bay, his partial suit hissing and creaking as it helps carry him through the busy crowds. You notice people making way for you and Soul, standing back and letting you pass. You pass a makeshift kitchen, steaming pots and on heating elements, a restless queue collecting meals. That algae came through isn't exactly a full meal, but with what we have here, we've been able to make it work. You see a ladle of greenish stew dished out. The color's something, isn't it? Soul smiles. Soul leads you out of the larger bay into a corridor lined with storage rooms that are now serving as dorms. You see someone filling a metal container from a standpipe, the water gushing out readily. Soul nods to the person as he passes. Just a little further now, Soul leads you into a freight elevator and whistles to some unseen operator to start it up. It jerks into life as you pass through the layers of the ship. You see people on every level, supplies crammed into every possible space, and sparks leaping in bursts as the ship is reshaped and modified to sustain its population. If Havish's were expecting an exodus from the flotilla, the Flux event has put a stop to that, Soul stretches. Some have crossed to the eye, but many just to gather the salvage or score a hot meal. So the pressure on our supplies is shrinking, but not like I'd hoped. With the Flux reaching all the way out here, people are starting to understand that our journey might not be over. Soul stares grimly ahead. Suddenly, the freight elevator screeches to a halt, and Soul leads you slowly out into a wide room of chairs and terminals, ringed by a mezzanine and with a glass roof above showing the distant hub and the far curve of the eye. The people at the terminals nod to him as he enters. This your ship? Soul nods. That's right. The Pilgrim Seed is mine to care for. He leads you up to a railed platform at the center of the room and stops. She chose me, so to speak. Well, at least her crew did. I do my best to serve him. Soul looks around the bridge of the ship, a pained expression on his face. I'll admit that responsibility isn't one that suits me, though we rarely get to choose such things. He glances back at you. But you, Sleeper, from what I understand, you chose to try to help us here. Is that right? I did my best to. Soul nods silently. But I have to ask you, Sleeper, why are you here now? Soul leans back and you feel his eyes on you, assessing you. I still want to help. Soul nods. I got to be honest with you, Sleeper. I'm not quite buying it, he smiles. I'm not trying to make judgments on your character, but in my experience, people do things for more reasons than just being helpful. I have tens of thousands of people here on the Pilgrim Seed, Sleeper, and there's tens of thousands more on the flotilla. He leans against a railing. A lot of them are looking to me to provide some future for them, some path out of this dead end we've gotten into. And this cycle, this very cycle, the thing we've been running away from, it just caught up with us. So these people are scared, Sleeper, and they're looking for me for reassurance. And then, on the same cycle, someone tells me they see you on board. A Sleeper. The same Sleeper, they reckon. They wanted so strongly to send a ship past the cordon to see us. Soul scratches at his beard. So the first thing I wanted to do was thank you for that. For your interest. He pauses. But the second thing I wanted to do was find out what you want from us. Soul's suit hisses and creaks. I think that's fair, don't you? Soul takes a deep breath. So what is it? I think a question with a question. What's happening around Ember? Someone in a terminal calls out to Soul, and he shouts some orders back. He turns to you. Apologies, he smiles that half smile. Tell you what, Sleeper, let's you and me make a deal. You want information, I don't understand that. Or I understand that. But I have a list of needs longer than the rim of the eye itself, he grimaces. So you do some things for me, and then we can talk about what's been happening in the system, and I'll answer all of your questions and then some. I may be the captain of the Pilgrim Seed, and she is certainly the biggest ship in the flotilla, but I'm not the only captain here. We have ships here with from each of the moons. Ember's Hearth, just like us, but plenty more from Ember Song and even Ember's Step. The moons have been at each other's throats, Sleeper. What with the pressure of the flux, the bad blood from the old days? Sol leans in. You aren't exactly all in alignment. What I need is a way to stop things escalating. For the crews on these ships and their captains to feel happy and comfortable enough to forget old rivalries and past crimes. He flinches at something. Those from Ember's Step, well, they've always been proud, but that pride seems to be a barrier to compromise right now. The last set of supplies I sent their way, they refused. Meanwhile, I have a supply shuttle docking access the Ember Song's ships gather at, but they've taken far too many cycles to unload. Maybe if you're heading that way, you can look in on them. I'm no politician, Sleeper, but if I don't... Sol stops. He leans back and flexes, his suit screeching. He groans a little, and you see the weight of the flotilla sitting on his shoulders. The suit is the only thing keeping him vertical beneath all that pressure. Look, you'll see for yourself if you go. Meet the others, Sleeper. See what they need. Keep them in line. He speaks through the pane, his voice clipped. Are you okay? Not really, but as long as this thing holds, he grimaces. I hope. Sol grits his teeth. You are what you appear to be, Sleeper, he smiles, his half-smile despite the pain. Because I'm not sure I can take any more bad news. Plus, there's plenty to be done here on the Pilgrim Seed, too, if you have a moment to pitch in. There's never enough around here. That's something I've learnt the hard way. Sol settles onto his cane, the pain visibly receding. All right, I have 1,000 things to attend to now, Sleeper, so you'll have to find your own way out. And with that, Sol sits at his terminal with slow and careful movements. You head back down in the freight elevator, and as you do, you see again the layers and layers of chaotic life this vessel and all the vessels the flotilla hold. New drive. Escape on the Sidril, flotilla support, stop the flux. See, enter the Greenway. I lost the drive, but I didn't get any upgrade points. That's kind of balls, game devs. I know it's an ending, but why make a drive if you aren't going to give me a point? Okay, Pilgrim Seed, Aki, and docking access. So let's go with Pilgrim Seed first. Pilgrim Seed support. Even Sol's own ship requires help, but figuring out what jobs need doing first and who to help is a challenge. Pilgrim Seed supply. Food is an issue on the Pilgrim Seed. Even with agriculture on board, a supply of matsutake will help fill the gap. Step, Song, and Hearth. Stability in the flotilla means relieving the pressure on the refugees from all 3 moons of Ember. Hearth survival. Whether Esh got her supplies to the Cordon or not, Pilgrim Seed and the Hearth refugees on it desperately need. So this is interesting. This wheel started partially full. I think that it must be fuller depending on how good you were at the earlier part. And I've got a bunch of matsutake, so we're just going to ram this stuff through. Oh yeah, we're going to finish this in no time. I didn't have to use all of my mushrooms. Sol finds you deep in the layers of the Pilgrim Seed, working on a patch for a life support vent. You hear him coming, his suit hissing as he does. I had to ask around to find you, he smiles. Seems you know this place better than me these days. Doubt it. Soul nods. I was on the work crew that built this thing, so maybe you are right, he winks. Soul holds out a hand. Stand up and let me see you, he pulls you to your feet. I don't believe we have ever had a sleeper on Ember's hearth. Soul looks you up and down. You sure do make a wish we had. You sure do make me wish we had. Could have done with a few workers as good as you. Thank you. Soul nods. You're welcome. Seems like I owe you some answers, seeing as you've been working hard on the Pilgrim Seed these past cycles. He leans against a crate, his suit creaking. What do you want to know about? The flux. Soul sighs. That's what I imagined. He scratches his beard. I can't say I'm an expert, but I can tell you what we witnessed on Hearth. At first we ignored it. A few farms had their automation systems blink out. Lifter suits locked up. Bots reset their schedules. Nothing we hadn't seen before. But then the news came out of Passau that they'd been hit harder. The local network had gone down and no one could get it back up. It was rough for a while, but out in the farmland we were used to that. Passau? Capital of Hearth. Tens of thousands of souls made it their home, Soul grimaces. So that's interesting. Tens of thousands is a city, but it's not what most people would probably expect a capital city to be. Anyway, we thought the flux was a freak event until the day they got the network running again. That's when the cascade happened. System after system corrupted, data lost, and then another flux hit, and another. The bots were running circles in the fields, people had to be cut out of their lifter suits like mine, and the city, I never saw it, but I heard from the others, Soul shivers. It only got worse from there. We couldn't seem to fight it. It cut us right open. That's what I know about the flux. Some folks say it came from the inner system, that it might be connected to some old tech there or something, but I never heard anything more than rumors. Soul scratches their beard. Sorry I don't have better news. Soul shifts on the crate. Anything else you wanted to ask? There was something. What do you want to know about Ember's Hearth? Sure, he smiles. I mean, I spent my whole life on that rock, so I have plenty to tell you. I'll save my life story for another time, he winks. But the short of it is that Hearth is the first of Ember's moons, the biggest and the most populated, which is down to the successful terraforming systems Cybele set up back when the Solheim owned the system. Terraforming? That's right, Ember Step was the first to try, but that failed. Hearth was when they perfected the system. However, Soul holds up a hand, despite what people might say, Hearth was never fully stable, Soul shakes his head. Sybil liked to talk it up, but after they pulled out and Solheim left, our people discovered they'd have to keep the systems running themselves, or the place would soon end up as dry as Step. Hearth was good as long as the evaporators kept running, kept filling our skies with clouds. Even after the collapse, our people kept those things going, turning that subsurface ocean into a periwinkle blue sky. Flux ended that, though, and when they failed, the rains failed, and the harvest with it, Soul pauses. And soon, you have a city without a way to feed itself, Soul shudders. That's when some of us, made the decision to set out on this place. He gestures at the Pilgrim Seed, and look for another future. Soul shifts on the crate. Anything else you wanted to know? Let's check if something else popped up. There was something. What do you want to know about? You. Soul squints at you. You want to know about me? I'm not sure that was part of the deal. I was thinking of, Sleeper. Unless you're asking about this, he raps on the metal of his suit. In case you haven't guessed, this is the only thing keeping me vertical, he adjusts his shoulder piece. It's a lifter suit made for working the fields. We had to modify it so I could walk around after the accident. And that's all I'm saying, Sleeper, because to be honest with you, I don't owe you more than that. You want to know about the flux, about Ember's Hearth? Go ahead. But don't pry into my life, and I won't pry into yours. Soul lets the silence sit, staring hard at the floor. The suit seems to loom over him, looking more like a burden than a support. With the bars around his head, you suddenly start to think of it as a cage. Look, I don't mean to be rude. Let's leave it there. There's too many eyes on me on this ship as it is. I'd rather just slip into the background, thank you very much. Soul shifts on the crate. Anything else you wanted to ask? I'm good for now. You sure? Soul smiles. I'm sure. Soul stands, flexing against the suit. He takes his cane in his hand. Keep it up, sleeper, he smiles as he leaves. They're making me think I need to start making new plans for this place. You're making me think I need to start making new plans for this place. With that, Soul leaves, and you wonder what he means as he creaks away down the corridor. You can't help but feel there's more to him than it seems. Aki, Ember's Step Refuge. Flotilla ship. A ship in the refuge flotilla. It's a strange sight given your time spent in the Greenway to see a greenhouse choked in red dust. It piles up along the edges, gathers in curling waves, and is carried by some unseen wind to whirl in front of you, in front of the glass ceiling. It is a desert in miniature, a captured landscape of iron-rich sediment and unseen life. Beautiful, isn't it? The remark comes from another figure standing at the viewing window, so quietly that you hadn't noticed them. Did they just arrive, or were they here before you were? Their cloth-swaddled foam reveals little. It is. They say nothing. You catch a glimpse of a pale face among the thick material, dark eyes glittering in the red reflected light. They turn to you as the dust swirls. Aki, they smile a tight smile. You're not from the flotilla, am I right? Aki, guarded Ember's Step refugee. I'm not from anywhere. Everyone is from somewhere, whether they wish to be or not. The red dust glitters in her eyes, whether it is a good place to be from or not. Aki gathers her cloak around her shoulders against the cold. What brings you to the wind's long shadow? Wind's long shadow? This ship, Aki looks at you curiously. Do you often wander around ships you don't know the name of? You're a strange one, Aki raises an eyebrow. I don't know whether to report you or send you back to where you came from, she smiles to herself, which is nowhere at all. You glance around the empty corridor, suddenly aware of how quiet it is on the ship. Unlike the other ships you've been on, the flotilla, there is a silent order to the wind's long shadow. In this moment, it feels unsettling. Where is everyone? Aki waves a hand. Asleep, mostly. It is night on Step, and so it is night here, she rubs her shoulders. At least for those of us who can sleep. Step? Aki turns away, irritated, eager to change the subject. You hear a creak as a set of shutters slowly begin to close around the glass ceiling of the greenhouse. As you watch, you feel the dissonance this place has with that word. There's nothing green here. A dust house, perhaps. It takes many systems to preserve this landscape, Aki begins, to simulate the wind cycle, the dust, layer the sand and dirt beneath. You watch the dust swirling. Systems that are failing. The flux event, Aki glances at you for a sign of recognition of the term, is eroding our ability to keep this place alive. To keep these traces of Step alive, she smiles to herself. Which is ironic, because when we left Step, the flux had eroded our ability to survive on the moon. Now the situation is reversed. Away from the moon, its ecosystems are as fragile as we were living upon it. Something catches your eye as the shutters darken the dust house. The winds picking away at the dunes begin to reveal something. A web. A network of thick branching forms. Then they close completely, and you see nothing in the dark. Soft blue lights flicker on in the corridor, uplighting Aki in a cold cyan. You have piqued my curiosity, but I'm so tired, Aki shivers. If you do not have a purpose here on the ship, I recommend you finding one. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll need to leave. Make yourself useful. Perhaps we will get another chance to talk, she turns. I would like that. With that, Aki pads away along the corridor. You stand for a moment in front of the dark dust house, trying to imagine the network of roots under the sand and dust. and then trying to imagine the moon that once housed them. We can click on the dust house again. And now we have systems repair. The crew won't let you into the dust houses, but there are plenty of supporting systems that could do with some love and care. Risky interface, +2 making yourself useful, -2 energy. Make yourself useful. Aki warned you that if you wanted to learn more about the wind's long shadow, you'll need to prove your willingness. Docking access, Ember's Song Hub. Oh, not even an action. Unload supplies. Soul's shipment of supplies sits partially unloaded. The crew absent. If you want to help, the best way would be to finish the job. Unfinished business. The more you offload supplies into the docking bay, the more attention your efforts seem to be gaining. 6 stage, risky endure. Always adds. Doesn't seem to have a strict negative. Okay, and now let's check for our flux event. Okay, I've got a flux node. Oof, it's inverted. I only need one, so I think I can use that 4. There's the 4. Deliver flux data. Peak asked you to help them extract data from the flux node in the wastes. That appeared after the flux recent event. Sleeper, come look at this. Peak is poring over one of the displays of the makeshift decoding suite they have set up in the Climbing Briars cargo bay. On the screen, a clump of data pathways like an ingrown root ball has started to untangle. This is an existing node corrupted by the flux event. It's totally twisted up. They glance at you to check you are listening. But inside, you watch as the unwinding pathways leave behind patterns of negative spaces, like shadows staying behind despite their caster leaving, as a whole other data set. Peak's eyes shine bright in the pale screen light. The flux event somehow seeds this data deep into the gaps in the node, wrapping them around it. What's in there? Not sure, Peak frowns. It isn't being very cooperative. You watch the screen. The pattern of shadows is becoming obvious now as each layer of pathway is pulled away. The flux event itself really did a number on unprotected nodes like this one. Most of the eye systems are screened against radiation and interference, but these exposed nodes, Peak makes a ripping motion with their hands, torn apart. Peak points to a thick tangle of threads on the screen. Look here, it looks like it's been tangled purposely, but it's actually that all the points within the node have been randomly arranged, as if the node was a bag of ball bearings and the flux shook them. The pathways tried to account for the rearrangement once the systems came back, hence the tangle. Peak pauses, the node continues unwind. Although, Peak muses, it was less like shaking a bag of ball bearings and more like making them all simultaneously occupy a superposition of every possible position in the bag before locking them back into a new configuration. They smile sheepishly, but that's a technicality. So what is the flux? We know it is a wave, one with exotic effects, that's all. Peak runs a hand through their hair. The question is not so much what flux is, but what is causing it. Where is it coming from? Peak turns away from the screen, meeting your eye. And there's something else. They pause. Have you spoken with any of the refugees? Yes. Peak lowers their voice instinctively. What they are reporting, massive system failures, cascading collapses of life support, of terraforming systems, total data corruption, peak swallows. The Flux shouldn't do that. It can fundamentally rearrange the structure of systems, especially those poorly shielded, but totally collapsing heavy-duty industrial systems, fail-safes and all, that doesn't make sense. Those kinds of systems are built for deep space, for solar flares and radiation. The Flux might penetrate them, but any reconfiguration should have been repairable. Peak looks back at the screen where the decoding node lies almost fully open. A shadow pattern of the negative spaces that existed within its scrambled interior darkens the screen, like a set of bruises showing the pattern of an object that made them. I need to look into something. I have an idea that what might be causing this wave, triggering the Flux, but I need time to research. Can I help? Peak shakes her head. I'm sorry, Sleeper, but I want to keep this to myself for now. If you need something to do, the flotilla could surely do with help. From what I heard from Esh, things are tense there. Where is Esh? Peak glances around the bay. Must be out. I've been focusing on this, so I can't say I've noticed, although the quiet is nice, they smile. Give me some time, Sleeper. Peak turns back to their console. I'll have some answers soon enough, I hope. You take one last glance at the uncoiling node as you leave. The dark shapes it leaves behind, somehow troubling. You're trying to shake them from your mind. There are things to be done elsewhere. Okay, so we got a 6-cycle clock. We were risking interface 2 for the systems repair. We got a 3, so we're gonna. I could lose energy, so that's fine. Start action. Excellent. Got a lucky break. And then oh, what? Oh no. Oh no. That's why oh no. I think that's gonna be the last one I do. Actually. Let's get some food. Feed our kitty. And now we'll end cycle. Two more cycles before the Sidra leaves, so. All right. I think that's going to be all for tonight. I think the Saturday night streams are going to become the standard for various reasons, and then I'm considering trying to do Wednesdays, but I am pretty busy during the week and get pretty tired, but we'll see. So let's see who's online that we can head to. Is Milky still on? Okay, so. Yeah, Milky's playing Elden Ring. So. I will send you guys to Milky. Thank you all for coming. Especially thanks to Saint for letting me know about my impending audio issues. Be nice to Milky. I'd like to remind everybody that Milky uses gender-neutral pronouns. Please be respectful. But other than that, they're kind of a, little goblin. So...